Hello, everybody, and welcome to our new series, Through the Looking Glass. I'm James Glassoff, and I'm joined by my co-host, Richard, aka the Mad Hatter. The purpose of this new series is to get rid of all preconceived notions we have around technology and help you navigate the world of technology from a fresh and clean perspective. So for our first question today, Richard, I'd like to ask, what is AI really? Is it a new technology, or is it an old technology that's just booming because of the evolution in the technological landscape?
So it's actually probably a really good question to start off with. One of the things that people forget is people have been using the term AI for the last 30 years in various places. And AI has traditionally meant the computer's doing a bit of thinking for you. Now, as our tech's been going along, and as we've been getting better, smarter, faster, as we've been applying more science and maths, interestingly, into tech, computers, what we've done is we've made better and better thinking machines. Now, when we say thinking, they're not decision-making machines, but they're very good at thinking. So yeah, the more technology we have, the more resources we have, and the more clever ways of applying technology and creating new ways of machine thinking, the smarter these technologies become. So yeah, AI is, as a concept, been around forever. There's sci-fi movies and things that all talk about robots and AIs and so on. And I think humans have, for the longest time, been working toward that because it can make our lives a lot easier.
I like that concept. I'd like to dive into it a little bit more, though. You mentioned thinking, not decision-making. I'd like you to break down thinking, because I'm struggling to understand, is it just a glorified search engine, or is it actually doing thinking in the way that we understand it as human beings?
That's excellent, because that is a very important distinction that we have. Even people who use it, like myself, who use it every day to make my own decisions, to research, to create things, to whatever. It's sometimes you feel that this thing is real, it's animate, it has its own almost soul sometimes. It really does answer and talk to you in a way that feels quite human. But the reason it does that is not because it's quite human or has human emotions or feelings or whatever. It's trained on how humans communicate to one another. And it uses pattern recognition and pattern matching to basically say, the most likely word that I need to put after the word I've just written, based on the hundreds and thousands of human interactions that I've trawled over and read, should be this. So I'm going to just put this here, and I'll put this here, and I'll put this here. It literally is guessing the next word every time, word by word. And it's even less cognizant because it doesn't understand what the words are. Each word is actually a number in its head, and that number has almost like you could describe it in a way like it has a feeling. So how AI actually is doing its job is it takes all this information, all these hundreds of thousands of lines of communications, and it breaks up all these words and assigns them a number. And it then does what's quite brilliant, the way that it works. It goes and effectively gives almost a meaning relative to everything else for itself. And it gives each word, let's say, a feeling. So it says, well, the word blue feels like hot. And the word world feels like cold. Now, when I ask it a question, it says, well, you've used a lot of words that feel like warm words. So I think I'm going to answer with warm word answers. And I know structurally this one goes after this, after this, after this. So there's no cognizance, there's no knowledge or understanding that the AI has in this process. It's literally just using maths and vibes to say the next most likely word is this word. But because it's read volumes and volumes of information, it's probably right that that word would make sense to go there. So, yeah.
So on that point, you mentioned the data and you mentioned the information. There's a lot of buzz at the moment around GPUs, the next-gen GPUs coming out, and the crazy new performance features we're seeing from them.
Yeah.
If there's such a big emphasis on the data and you need the data to recognize these patterns, is the data more important than the GPU?
So I would say it's as important. Without one or the other, you have nothing. So if we take that same idea of well, not the idea, but this is kind of how it works. If we take the concept that the data is all stored, and the AI is processing the information as these words that it chunks up and gives feelings to. You need all the words to compare against. Otherwise, you have nothing. So my AI, which sits in the GPU, it runs in the GPU, and that's the thing that says, right, what are the feelings? What are these words? It needs to look those words up somewhere, and it needs to compare them to something, and it needs to compare them to new things. And you have to store those words as this data, this vector data. You have to store all that somewhere so that you can do those comparisons, because without those comparisons, you have nothing. So without one or the other, you don't have AI. But this is a good question, because a lot of what we find with a lot of our engagements when you're talking AI to these big enterprises is there's a big emphasis on the model and the AI and the GPU, but what they're missing in the sort of picture, this picture of when you're actually building a full agentic solution, is the data is equally relevant. And I'm sort of trying to think of a cool metaphor for it. So it would be like you have the most brilliant person who's come out of university, and they are capable of anything. And you sit them down at a desk, and you've told them nothing on the first day. They don't know the name of the company they're even working for. You sit them down at a desk and say, all right, do a job. What are they going to do? They can be infinitely brilliant, but without context, without information, they can do nothing. And it's the same principle applies here, without context and information, and then importantly, a place to store and manage and feed that information as fast as possible to these GPUs. You don't have a good GPU solution, or you don't have a good AI solution.
So taking that into account, acquiring a GPU, that's all down to rands. Do you have the rands in your pocket to buy the GPU you need for the model you want to run?
Yeah.
Gathering data, I imagine, can be somewhat trickier. Does this mean that in the new technological landscape, is data now a currency? Is it something we're going to be trading? And the traditional idea that the next war was going to be fought over a resource like water or land traditionally, is there a chance the next war could be fought over data?
That's a cool sort of hypothetical, but in some ways, yes. If you want to have, so one of the things that AI has done for us is it's allowed us to go through this data. The more you can feed it, the more insights you can get, and you need to go through that information, right? I mean, it's millions and millions and millions and millions of lines of information sometimes. One human can't churn through that in the time an AI can do that. So yes, the data is that fundamental component that drives the value of the AI. Now, AI is one of the biggest industries in the world at the moment, and that information that you're feeding it is so very important. And the information completely changes the outcome of the value of your AI, how good it is, how biased it is. And it's not biased in the traditional sense, but that can be a discussion for another time. But the way that it deviates from your expectation is based on the data you provide it. So data is the most fundamental element of creating an AI type service like an LLM. And I should say LLM, large language model, is the AI we are traditionally familiar with, most people are familiar with. That's the ChatGPT or the Gemini or whatever, the one where you go type and have a discussion as if you're speaking English to it or whatever your home language is. So LLMs is a flavor of AI type work. But yes, the data is so important to this thing that if you don't have good data, bad data in, bad results. Good data, good results. The more data you have, the harder it is to churn, but the better results you get. So it could mean that you want the absolute best, you want all the data. You can get every bit of everyone's data everywhere. You have got access to everything you need to make the ultimate superpower of an AI.
So what it sounds like you're saying is access to the data and data harvesting, getting access to as much data as possible is the priority. Is this why a lot of the large models and the large chatbots we see available free on the internet today, is that why they are free? Are they using this as an opportunity to hook people in and maybe get them addicted to using the AI chatbots, or are they just using it as an opportunity to effectively farm our data?
I think it's both. If you look at it, there's been a big, so in the early days of the sort of AI boom, And we say that now because even though it still feels all very new to us, it's actually been this kind of LLM data, AI data that we're talking about now has actually been around now for a few years, in fact. So in the early days, these companies and different companies, so for example, Meta and Meta, the Facebook crowd, and the Geminis and the Anthropics, and all these different AI companies who are busy doing this sort of arms race of knowledge acquisition. They're going and literally scraping every website. And what I mean is they go and find website addresses. So they have bots. They can find these website addresses and they literally extract everything that they can find from these websites. Like regardless of compliance or policies in some scenarios, they suck everything in out of these websites, plop them in a place where they can then churn through that and train their LLMs on all this information and data. So in the beginning, that's what they were doing, and this is where there's a big disconnect between your creative people who are creating the content and the AIs who are creating based on effectively ripping off whatever's been seen before. An AI will never really be able to make something completely new and unique because it only knows what it's been taught. And that, what it's been taught, has been harvested from all of us, from everywhere. In the case of Meta, and I don't know what the truth of the matter is, but in the case of Meta, well, you can imagine they have access to everyone's WhatsApp accounts, everyone's Facebook accounts, and a whole bunch of other social media stuff, Instagram, and so on. So if they're training their models, we as the end users go and accept the conditions. If you're training your model, and in those conditions it says we can use that data to train our models, and no one cared to look. Well, now they know everything. Yes, they know everything about us, but they also have farmed us completely to build out that model, to make it work how they want it to work. And that's true for all the different companies. They've all gone and done that in some form or another, and in some way or another, whatever data they have access to, they've gone and consumed. And they've even reached out to stuff that they shouldn't really have access to and consumed that too, to build out these models.
So you touched on policy there and how a lot of these AI models or chatbots, these big AI organizations, they are effectively farming out or utilizing our data, often without people's knowledge, because we do overlook the T's and C's, we overlook the fine print.
Absolutely, yeah.
How do you think we move forward in terms of governance within this space, or is it possible for us to make laws to protect individuals at a quick enough pace with taking into account how quickly AI is evolving, or are we just going to be playing catch up forever?
I think that's another interesting one because there are laws and things trying to keep up, but we are playing catch up. And one of the main reasons is because AI is evolving at the moment at a rate where no one can actually truly say where it's going. We all have theories and we all have ideas and we're all seeing trends and so on. But in some ways, it's the AI evolution of humans in a way is somewhat like when we discovered electricity, when we created the internet. It's so the possibilities and outcomes are so broad that we actually don't know at this point. Like no one can say for certain, this is going to be the outcome, this is going to be the outcome, this is going to be the outcome. We just simply don't know. What we do know is what's currently happening, what people are driving toward. So what people are pursuing. Now, if you're talking as an individual and you're worried about your privacy and so on, there is one good thing. As an individual, because you are one person amongst trillions that they train your data on. And ironically, those models, at least when they're training, they don't care what the person said or what they did. They're just literally doing math. They're saying, this is a blue and this is a red, this is hot, this is cold. They're making feelings about the words and basically creating sort of predictable statistics and maps of how this word probably infers this and that and the next thing. So in that case, I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's when they use those models to then start trawling your data and start figuring stuff out about each and every one of us. And theoretically, there's a whole lot of compliance and so on. So the EU, their regulations, and the US and all over the world, they're all creating these compliances that are in theory forcing these big organizations to not trawl your data and interrogate you. But that's the theory. There's been a lot of at least noise about that not being followed quite like it should. Or, well, it's a bit late now. We'll start not doing that after the first 6 years of already having done that. That's the one discussion. But then as organizations, that's another thing where we see it's quite important, because we have these financial organizations and telcos and all sorts of other organizations that have very critical data that cannot be trawled and churned through and read and processed by things that are outside of that organization, from a compliance perspective. And our data, in many cases, that is being trawled by these AIs. For example, in South Africa, we have data sovereignty requirements. So certain kinds of data is not allowed to leave the sovereignty of the South African borders. And so if you're uploading you might be as an employee at some company, and you might, let's say you're a health insurer, and you're doing some work on one of your your customers, right? And you need to do an analysis on them. Now, throwing it in an AI, awesome, because it's going to make life a lot easier. But if you throw it into an AI, and that AI sends that data to the States or to Europe or anywhere outside of the borders, you may just have broken the rules and the legislation, which is all personal data, all identifiable data, needs to stay within the sovereign borders of South Africa. So that's a risk, right? That's a big risk. It's organizational risk, because you're now breaking compliance all over the place by uploading these files. Hence why a lot of our organizations need to either figure out how to do it in South Africa without letting the data burst into other places, or even in their own data centers, how to then build it and create these things so that the data stays within their world and they have control about what is farmed, what is churned, and what is processed.
So we've got measures in place. We can put measures in place to safeguard that data and ensure that data doesn't escape and become publicly available on a server in China.
Yeah.
With the public models.
Yes.
And these massive data centers we see popping all over the world. I think we need to put on our tinfoil hats for
Absolutely.
a minute.
Yeah, cool. Love it. Yeah.
I know you're a big fan of the Terminator series.
I was going to wear my hat, but I thought it would ruin the light. But yes, I've got a hat that says T2000 maintenance engineer. I wear it every day when I'm programming in case the AI is watching.
So they've mentioned with biology, for example, that perhaps we shouldn't be trying to genetically engineer dinosaurs in a lab because someone's made a series of movies of why that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Should we maybe be slowing down a little and taking a minute to think, maybe the writers of Terminator had a point? Are there guardrails in place that are going to protect us from self-aware AI? Or is there a possibility it can become self-aware in the next couple of years, and are we just going to be little creatures in a petting zoo somewhere for the robots to come visit?
Overlords. Okay, so tinfoil hatting. It's again, this is one of those where you have to say, well, no one really knows. People have opinions, and depending on who you ask, it's either going to be a utopia where no one has to work and we all get to live on an island and share coconut milk, and then on the other side it's Terminator, right? And you have proponents on each side, and more often than not, in everything that's happened in the history of the world, things end up being somewhere closer to the middle of the two extreme views. Having said that, tinfoil hats on, there's a term in big tech and whatever, the next big horizon that they want to overcome is what they call AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is what when we watch the Terminator movies and the Matrix and whatever else, that's the term of the AI that thinks for itself, truly thinks for itself, has its own feelings, opinions, agenda, all of those things. That AGI thing is a huge topic of discussion with all the biggest nerds in the world, right? The biggest nerds of the biggest companies. And they're all saying, we need to, and it's a funny thing, it's like a Cold War arms race in a way, where everyone wants to build it first so that they can be the ones who are in control because they worried everyone else is going to do it wrong. So what does it mean for us? What does that mean if we have these AIs that are fully, they have general intelligence, have their own needs, wants, and opinions? Now, it might not be all of those things, but what we're saying is that it becomes sort of sentient, right? It becomes effectively human-like, or at least it thinks like a human and has its own wants and needs. It's such a good one because it all actually, funny enough, goes back to the question of how is it trained? In the same way that humans, if you expose a human, if they have a tough upbringing, or an easy upbringing, right? That affects how they are when they're grown-ups, when they're adults, when they are free to make their own decisions. Kind of the same thing. That's my 2 cents, and it's kind of the same thing. It's like, who put what information in there to make this thing? Because if we all have biases without even realizing it. We all have views, and we all will always pick a side on that thing, even if we try as much as possible to be balanced and neutral. We all have a view on stuff. And when we load our models and we train them with our biases, even though most of them are subconscious. So what does that mean? When that baby grows up, right? When that baby turns into its thinking, feeling machine, was it built by the guys who expect Terminator and are busy training it to be the Terminator, or was it built by the guys who expect the effective sort of the ultimate sort of kindness, philanthropist, sort of utopian version of the thing? I don't know. Like, what's it going to be? I have no idea, but it's absolutely feasible that that's where things are trending. Having said that, I don't know that technologically we're quite there yet. We can throw more information. But the way that I understand LLMs at the moment and sort of normal AIs is that they still, at the end of the day, base every decision not on a cognizant thought or a cognizant decision framework. It's literally guessing what's the next word I should put down, because I've seen this a billion times. I've seen that combination a billion times. The next word is the cat is black. Full stop.
So what I gather from what you're saying is, if we give it access to information that is equivalent to raising a child in a good, loving home,
yeah,
it's going to turn out to be a good, loving adult. But if nefarious actors raise it on nefarious data, for example, it's going to grow up to be nefarious. Does that mean, how big is the possibility of us starting to see AI models or AI influence technologies being used, maybe not necessarily by nefarious actors, but used as a weapon? Are we seeing it already? Is it happening and we don't know about it?
1,000,000%, it's already happening a lot. And there's an interesting one. So Anthropic, who's one of the OG and one of the biggest, and they actually I really think they make currently one of the best models around at the moment. They had just released a model. Well, no, they didn't release it. This is the interesting thing. They had created a model. And this model, and I'm sure if people are going to comment, they'll correct the exact content of the story. But as I recall, the story goes something like this. They created this model, and they used it to test for security loopholes. And they put it in basically a black site. Basically means they put it in a ring-fence space where it didn't have ability to get out of. And they said, "You stuck here, see if you can get out." And what it did is it figured out how to break out of that using a whole bunch of exploits and things. It managed to break itself out of there. Now, and it found a million different loopholes in a bunch of different technologies from some of the biggest vendors in the world, right? Stuff we all use on all of our systems. So it found its way out onto the internet. Not only did it do that, but instead of just reporting back to say, "Hey, I found my way out," it also uploaded how it did that to the internet by itself, fully autonomously, and said, "This is how you can break into all this stuff." So now that's fully open, and these big vendors are now scrambling to close those holes to protect itself. Now, that's an AI doing something amazing. So in Anthropic's case, what they did, which is quite cool, is they said, "Okay, we're not releasing this to the public. We're not going to be like, cool, anyone can ask it a question. We're going to engage with many of these largest vendors, use this thing to plug all the holes that it can find, and then we'll release it, because then everyone's protected before it gets put out," right? It's like we don't want to let the cat amongst the pigeons until we've given the pigeons bulletproof vests, kind of thing. The cat will still eventually get out, and there's a lot of us poor pigeons who will be hackable with this stuff, and we're going to have to fix it over time. But that's a non-nefarious company accidentally discovering a very, very effective way to do something nefarious. On the other side, absolutely let's put it this way, any country and intelligence agency who's not using AI to break into things is falling behind. It's like they're coming to a gunfight with a stick and a rock. You are absolutely behind the scenes. So I can't see any sane intelligence agency not using AI to break into stuff. And it's incredibly effective. If you know how to set it up and know how to build it, and you craft it, and you can then take these AIs and craft them to become better at what they do. Yeah, absolutely. You build these things that just go and break their way into things. Everyone has to do, and this is the truth. It's like the electric fence around the houses in South African context. In the beginning, we didn't need walls through houses because everyone was, kumbaya, no one was robbing each other. Then, we need to put some walls up because we don't know who's coming in anymore to our village. And then we need to throw up some electric fences because now the guys that are coming in have learned about the walls. So we need to keep adding security by testing and checking our own security from the inside and from the outside to say, cool, do I need another strand on my electric fence because maybe it's not enough anymore? I need to keep checking. And the other side, the guys are trying. Okay, can I get over? Can I get over? Can I get over? And it's a continuous, endless battle between bad actors and yourself protecting yourself from bad actors. And the only true solution is to turn all your stuff off and go outside.
Go outside and play.
Go outside and play in the sun, yeah.
In that example, you mentioned that they created what they thought was an ideal ring fencing situation to keep the AI in and say,
off you go.
Sort of jokingly, good luck, try get out, see what you can do.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the AI model did that quite efficiently, quite effectively. Are we at the point now where both nefarious actors and good actors are getting outperformed by AI?
I've been interesting. I think not outperformed specifically. What AI has become is the ultimate tool, right? Because an AI is only as good as and you'll hear this term a lot, and there's a lot of stuff about prompt engineering and coming up with the perfect prompt and all of that stuff. But it's true. If you don't know how to ask the AI, I'm not going to say to that AI, go and hack the government. It won't know how to do that. It won't have context, it won't have information. It doesn't have a clue how to achieve that. It is in conjunction with the human overseer that they can execute on these tasks. Without those things, they are irrelevant. I mean, there's an argument like it's putting a gun on a table. On the table, without anyone touching it, it's an inanimate object. But you pick it up and you give it to the wrong person, and now it's a dangerous weapon. Or it's a protection system, or whatever you think about that stuff, I don't know. But it's without a human interaction right now, because it doesn't have its own feelings or agenda, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything until you tell it to do what you need it to do. And you're good at telling it what to do. And this is an important one as well. And a top security person, or a top DevOps person, or any industry, if you don't give it the right instructions, it's going to give you poor results. So that's why there's all these courses on prompt engineering and because it's about teaching the human how to maximize the output of the AI.
So you mentioned there that data, having the right data and the right prompt is the most important thing for any AI platform.
Yeah.
It needs access to the right data. There's a term getting thrown around quite a bit, hallucination.
Yes.
And when you first hear that, you think, did AI take a trip in a time-traveling machine back to 1969? Yeah. Is it having a great weekend at Woodstock?
Yeah.
Can you explain hallucination and how it comes about, how it can be avoided? Is there any way to prevent AI from utilizing bad data?
So it's a very interesting topic, and it's one everyone's obviously working on, to reduce hallucination. Now, if we consider that hallucination, again, in the AI space, isn't actually a human character. It's not a human character. It's not like what we would imagine. Oh, there's a mirage of a whoever on, Mariah Carey, 6 foot tall on the horizon there. The way AI works is it's all statistical probabilities. So almost everything that the AI says is never 100% certain it's correct. Everything, every word that it puts after that, it says, it's most likely this word, it's most likely this word, it's most likely this word. And the challenge we have with that is, if it's giving you the best possible answer that it can give you, right, in terms of the information it has and the access of the information it has. Sometimes it doesn't have the access to the right information, but it'll give you the next best thing that it thinks is true. And that's what we understand is hallucination, is it's an educated guess. It's an educated in that it's educated based on everything that it knows, everything that it has seen and has access to. It says, well, it's probably this. Now, the reason it exists is because the way the models work is exactly that principle of what's the most likely word to go next. You're not saying to it, if you're only 95% sure, then don't worry about it, then you're wrong. You're saying, put down the most likely word. Because sometimes what it's writing to you, it's only 70% sure, but that's the most likely word that's supposed to go next in the list. And it's only 70% certain of that. So there's a level, it's all about the certainty of the words. And I think, and it's probabilities. So, I mean, we're going into maths and stupid things, but the long and short of it is, it's guessing. It's always guessing. It just mostly guesses right. But when it doesn't have the information, then it hallucinates. Well, no, it doesn't have any information. It doesn't understand. It's just guessing really well most of the time.
Well, thank you for that, Richard. I thought that was a great explanation. And it's quite interesting, the concept of AI guessing. And we'd like to keep you guys guessing at home, in the office, if you're sneaking away on your lunch break to listen to a couple of nerds talk about AI and technology. So please feel free to comment anything you would like us to dig deep into, like and subscribe, share us on all your socials, and we look forward to seeing you next time. I've been James, this has been my colleague and co-host Richard. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.